Amen. I want to introduce you to another good friend of mine. His name is Tim. He's going to speak with us this morning.
His name is Tim.
Tim.
Hi. Hi. Usually they say, Tim, why don't you take it when we have the kids in here and the adults, because you're basically a kid. Yeah. So hi, there are a few kids in here, and so you'll have to cover their ears a few times, but it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Well, my name is Tim. Tim Timmons, same thing. We are in a series called I Can Relate, and last week it was I Can Relate to partners and just to humans through conflict, and if you weren't here for that, check that out, because it was really, really great what Jamie invited us into. And it's all through the lens of Solomon and wisdom. So Solomon, the writer of the book of Proverbs and the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes. So that's been the whole context. So, you know, the Proverbs are like, it's so ADD, it's crazy. And so this message is basically what I'm trying to do is should be as ADD as possible. So it's going to be like, oh, look, a deer. I mean, it's going to be everywhere. So just, God bless America. This week, I can relate to my partners in life through my wants versus my needs. Okay, we're going to take an offering, and I think we'll be done. This will be really great. What do you need? Go. What do you need?
Money.
Money? How much?
Enough to get a new car.
Enough to get a new car. Okay, keep going. Oxygen. Water, how much? 6 to 8 glasses a day. Right? I mean, do we need that, or can we sustain on less than that? But okay, any other needs? What kind of food? Pizza. Okay. Wow, you're like my son. That's so great. Okay, I'm going to tell you a few things. Shelter. Thank you. Thank you. Now it's my turn. Okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. I'm going to tell you a few things that I need. I'm going to be real vulnerable here and start out with this so that at some point you'll be able to be vulnerable as well. I need a pool. I'm flanked by 2 pools, people. And every day, like we go in the summer and I'm looking, I'm like, hey guys, looks pretty wet. I'm too, I'm just sweating. Gosh, it would be great. You know, my kids like panning over the edge of our, deck, looking at them, like doing all their things. And anyways, I need a pool. I need you to know the truth about the dress. It's black and blue, okay? So just FYI, if you're those people, can I get an amen? I need proper Mexican food here in Franklin, Tennessee that's open 24 hours a day. So our building fund is going to go toward that. So I'm just, if I have any say in it. My hero, Stan Endicott, he would always say, God's got the cattle on 1,000 hills, but I need cash. That's what he'd always say. And so I that's something I need, and apparently we need that for tea. That was my mouth for a little bit, and I changed my ways. I need, on a long drive, I need me some Reese's Sticks and Sweet Tarts. Let's just look at that picture for a little while. I could make out with those, and I'll be real honest. It's just the truth, and I kind of do. Because they're that good. I need this belly to go away. I know I hide it maybe, but like there's just a little love in there, and I work out and stuff, but this just ain't going away. It's like, hey man, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's just hanging out. Probably because of my Reese's Sticks addiction, but that's beside the point. And I need to just make this like just a true statement, this next thing, that In-N-Out is way better than Whataburger. What? Okay. So I need one of those here in Nashville, Tennessee as well. So there are just some of the needs that I have, and I feel like are manageable. Okay. All right, today we're going to go through, just have a few like running definitions of what needs and wants are. Okay? And as you leave this place, you can have your own definitions and go, that guy was cray-cray, but today I have the microphone. So these are going to be the definitions for needs and wants. Okay, and it'll just help us kind of walk through this together. So, a need is something for basic function. Okay? Air. water. How much? There's a spectrum here, and there are varying degrees, but it's for basic function. A want is something for optimal function. Okay, so that's just so we have a baseline of like what these things actually mean today, okay? So a need is something for function, and a want is something for... Wow. This feels really good, you guys. Neither of these things are wrong or bad. These are beautiful things. Needs and wants are beautiful things. They just are. There's no getting rid of them. It's just what we have. I love a guy named Andy Stanley talks about wants as appetites. I love that. It'll be helpful just in this discussion today, and it hopefully will be a discussion. And the idea of appetites are that everybody has them, and they're actually beautiful. Like the appetite that we have for food, for eating, is a beautiful thing. If we didn't have the appetite for food, well, we'd wither away, both emotionally and physically. We have the appetite for relationships. That is just an appetite, a God-given appetite, right? And in Proverbs, here's a bit of the pieces of wisdom, the ADD pieces of wisdom from Solomon. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We have an appetite for relationship that is so healthy. There are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. We have an appetite for progress, getting ahead. We have an appetite for respect. We have an appetite to win. We have an appetite to be loved, and then we have an appetite to love. We have an appetite to be accepted, to be known. We have an appetite for recognition that just is. It's like when our kids are like, "Dad, did you see what I just did?" You're like, "Yep. For the 40th time, that was powerful, buddy." You're like, but it's like, "Dad, you see this? Oh, look at this, Dad." Happy Father's Day. We have an appetite for things. Awesome. None of these are like, man, I got to go to shame for these. These are God-given. And Andy talks about these three things about appetites. That one is they are God-given. Like these are God-given appetites within us. Just sin and our ego seem to destroy them because it just takes them too far. Our appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Like, Hill and I were out for dinner the other night, and Timmons, I don't mind eating lots of food. Like, I really love me some food. And so I was going for it, and I was stuffed. But I'm like, but the dessert's coming. And they're like, "Do you want dessert?" And I'm like, "No, but can I just see the menu? I just want to look at it, And I'm like, "Do you have Reese's Sticks? Do you have Reese's Sticks?" And so they didn't, but I got dessert. And so I'm like stuffed going, "Oh, man." And then, 4 hours later, I'm like, is there any snacks I could do? I mean, I'm never satisfied. I mean, you think of enough money. Is there enough money? Can I ever have enough number one singles for some? It's like, can you ever have enough? Can you ever have enough, whatever, sex? Can we ever have enough? Don't answer that. Proverbs 27, Solomon speaks to this. Human desires are like the world of the dead. There's always room for more. I don't even know what that means. It's just kind of crazy. Like, human desires are like the world of the dead. There's always room for more. So it's not damning these things. It's going, well, they just are what they are. There's always enough. There's always never enough. There's always more. And then the last thing that he said that I thought was pretty cool is your appetites always whisper now, never later. Like, appetite's always saying, okay, yeah, now is pretty much the time. Like, in 2 minutes, we got this now. Because if you wait 2 minutes, you'll probably talk yourself out of that. They're God created, but our ego and sin has destroyed them. You see that with Adam and Eve, that story. They're never fully satisfied and finally satisfied. Our appetites are always whispering now, never later. The struggle here, I think, because again, appetites are really great, wonderful things. But the struggle becomes when our wants and our desires, our appetite, becomes our need. Struggle is when our wants and our desires and these beautiful things become our need. It's like this. I'm pretty, I don't know if you guys know this or not, or you can see it, but I'm bald. Yeah, pretty good looking. And so the thing is, what they tell me is that, Tim, your 3 razor blade, that's not really going to hook you up. Commercials are like, dude, I don't know if you've got the right car, and if you get this, people might look a little bit better at you. I mean, if you get 15 blades, just put that out. I mean, that's like, you're going to be hot. I mean, it becomes this like desire and want, this appetite, and the commercials are always saying, everything is saying, you don't just want this, you need this, right? People join churches, church communities all the time because something else didn't meet their needs, right? And I totally get it. But is it needs, or are these just wants and desires? And wants and desires are really great. An appetite for certain things, awesome. Relationships end all the time. And we know it because we've been in them all, and we've said this, all of us, many a time. And relationships are ending because we go, they're just not meeting my needs. Now, I know that is very nuanced, and that is a bit of what we like to call a sore subject. And often we go straight to shame when I hear something like that. Well, I was divorced. Well, and that was exactly what I said. Shame is not the aim here. We learn stuff from our past, and we go, oh, yep, I kind of own that. I blew that. Or you know what? I did. I made that all about my needs. And then we move forward. Does that make sense? Like, if we just stay here and keep looking back, and that's what shame wants us to do, it doesn't say, hey, okay, so from today on, let's all start looking at this stuff maybe from a different point of view in our relationships from here on. The point of this today, like my basic question, every time you speak or have anything, there's this basic downright point that we're hoping to try to figure out how do we actually practice all week long. And the point here is, what does it look like for us to find contentment? So needs and wants, we're always trying to satiate our contentment. And content in this context and in the biblical context is not like, you know what, I'll just surrender, I'll be content. Biblical contentment is like a deep breath of going, God's at work in all things. You're at work in all things. You know what's going on here. Would you help me in this situation? It's like finding contentment that He is God and we're not, right? Just a different way of looking at it. It's not just surrendering, going, well, I surrender. Okay, God. But it's like going, okay, I surrender, and I'm going to find contentment in who You are, and that will help me walk through the rest of this. So I'm just giving a whole bunch of context here. So that's my point. It's utter joy. It's like the small, shallow breathing that we do all the time. It's just in our relationships, the things we want, we're just pining for. But contentment is this deep breath. What does it look like for us to find contentment as it comes to relationships with our wants and our desires? I would love for you to think about this. Just it'll help us if you actually think of a time or something, an instance, where your needs aren't being met. Right? Bless you. Just think of, do you have something? Just think of that if you possibly can. Where's just somewhere in a relationship where your needs aren't being met. Your wants and your desires are just not being met. There's no poking. There are 3 dangerous things that seem to happen that we find all the time, and in the Proverbs it's pretty clear, all of these. What happens when we move from desire to something that confusing desire with something that we need is this: I deserve it. I totally deserve this. And it moves from, I deserve this, to now I'm going to start demanding it. I'm not getting this in my relationship, so you know what? I've done all this for you. I deserve this. And then it moves from, I mean, think of the thing, your thing right now, right? The thing, and at some point we're like, I'm getting hosed in this relationship right now, right? I deserve this. I keep doing this for you, so I'm going to start demanding with strength or with like withholding. Oh, you're not giving that to me? I'm just going to sit over here and hang out. You're not getting anything from me. And then we move to judgment, which I'm like, well, she doesn't even love me anyways. I mean, that progression happens every day in my relationships. Like in these little ways that we don't even really know. Does that make sense? If you put that through the lens of what the need that you're not getting met right now. And just for FUN, we do this unwillingly with God all the time, right? I mean, when things are awesome, it's like, yes, God, you are so good. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great. You know, like we lean right in and we got to go on. I mean, and how often do we hear this or say this? Like when we get a job, you know what? I got a job last week. Oh, I'm so blessed. God gave me this. Or were we not blessed the day before? And it sounds crazy, like, of course, but like we do that internally without even thinking about it. So when it doesn't go our way, what I do, and I think most of us do, and we see in Proverbs and all through the Bible actually, is this idea of, if I'm not getting it, I start going, you know what? Dang it, God, I deserve this. I've done this for you and this. You know, for me, why haven't you take this cancer out of my body? God, look what I do for you. Then I start going, well, I'm going to start demanding this. I'll pray harder, I'll do this stuff, or I'll just start getting angry about it. And then I start making a judgment and going, okay, you know what? You're quiet, so will I be. And I take my worship away from the one who actually has my contentment available, all available. And I take that worship and that contentment and I put it over here to these other things. Gosh, I do that in my relationships. I do that in every area of my life. Unwillingly, there's no shame attached to it. I'm not like, it just happens. My appetite loses here because I've started deserving it and then demanding it. And then my judgment is like, you know what? Maybe you're not as good as you say you are, right? So I take my worship over here. Just think about that in your life for a second. No shame attached to that. I mean, you can if you want, but that's not the point. King Solomon, who's the author of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, he was, if you remember, or if you don't, no problem, he was King David's son. And he's kind of a son out of a precarious relationship with a woman named Bathsheba, where David had an affair with Bathsheba and killed her husband. And I mean, it's just a debacle, right? And out of that, you're kind of like, well, gosh, should good things come from such a mess? From such a dung heap, Yeah, God works great as fertilizer, making these things like grow out. The stuff of life is fertilizer for God to go, I'm going to make beautiful things grow out of this. Like, that's just great. If we get nothing else today, that's like, what a gift. We see just that line, just that lineage, and go, oh, that's cool. So he's at work in your stuff, right? Solomon had an appetite, and God basically asked him before he became the king, what's your appetite for? What do you want? And he said, I want wisdom. I have an appetite for wisdom. I think all the other things will work themselves out if I have wisdom. So that's what he got. He was the wisest king ever. I mean, he was probably the richest king ever. In that history, he's known as that. So he wasn't, appetite for all these other things. He wanted wisdom. But with anything awesome, there's always the potential without real, it's our third core, our purpose here at Journey is being refined in community. Without really even that peace, because what we know about Solomon is there wasn't that peace going on. Like, he was king, and it was like, this is what's happening, FYI, and if you don't, you're dead. I mean, he was this young, just wise guy, and then as time went on, little by little, inch by inch, woman by woman, decision by decision, nobody sets out to, like, mess up your life. We're not like, you know what? Here's what I want to do. As a young man, I want to get old and mess up everything. Like, nobody starts out like that. But these little decisions here and there, little by little, keep, like, adding up. And if we're not aware enough and able to, like, step back and go, okay, I just want to be curious of, like, what's going on here, then we end up in this place. So Solomon, he made what he thought was a wise decision to marry his first wife, who was the Pharaoh's daughter. And so they were uniting kingdoms, and it was a wise choice. And then the Queen of Sheba came in, and she was super hot, and he was like, man, she's wise and hot, and I'm wise. I'm real wise. You know what? You should be my wife too. So again, inch by inch, row by row, wife by wife, Solomon went from 1 to like 700 to 1,000, they think, wives. I mean, that guy knew some stuff. I mean, that's like, but that's crazy. I mean, do you see the progression that happens? And when I'm like saying, do you see? I'm like going, hey, mirror as well. And this is like the greatest gift to actually speak, because I get to work through this and stuff and go, oh, yeah, I'm with you. This isn't for you or at you. This is like with you. We're like figuring this out together, right? 700 to 1,000 wives. And in that, like, things kept getting more confusing and more confusing, because his wants and desires became his needs. You know what? I need that. And then his, like, power and rage and all this stuff became really intense. What's interesting is that if you really look at the scope of their lives, King David messed up just as much. But I think, David ultimately loved God more than ego. And Solomon, if you look all the way through and read the book of Ecclesiastes, you can see that really Solomon loved ego more than God. And that's just, it shows in what we're making our desires and our appetites, which are beautiful, but when they go out of control. Hopefully you can be putting some of your world into some of this, not in a shameful way, because thank you, Jesus, that he is redeeming all things, at work in all things. And it's not like, oh, I can't believe you did that. Guilt is not a terrible thing. Of Holy Spirit going, hey, just so you know, this might be a time when we start walking forward in a new way, like with my strength. But shame is where we just live back here and go, oh, I can't. Jesus is saying, hey, just what if we walk forward today? Okay, so that's the heart here. We lose perspective in our appetites. Solomon lost perspective in his appetites. I use this reference all the time just because it's helpful for me, but just this idea of he was literally drunk in his appetites. Not this kind of drunk, but like actually wasn't able to make sober decisions the deeper and deeper he got into things. And I think that about worry. Like, think about worry in your life and in my life. Like, when I keep living into the appetite, and the appetite is a fine thing. It's like, I care about these people. I care about me. I care about these things. So I need to worry, and as I start worrying, I start going inch by inch, row by row, wife by wife, worry by worry. And all of a sudden, I'm down this place where it's just not helpful for anybody. Like, I'm so drunk on worry. Or in relationships, when we're not getting what we want and we need to, like, I demand it, my strength in demanding it, like, I get so drunk in that I can't even see straight. I can't even see my wife for who she is, this amazing woman that she is. The progression goes from desire to worship. And ultimately, it's the worship of God is moved because he hasn't done what we wanted him to do, and we just place it on other things. For me, that can be like gear. I'm a recording nerd. I love that stuff so much. I have a studio. I'm so excited. It's like a room. And I love it. So I could like nerd out with eBay and Craigslist all day long, which is a great thing. God has given me the abilities and the love for that. But when I kind of leave and start actually making this, giving all my attention and energy toward this thing, it just gets dangerous. Inch by inch, row by row, wife by wife, worry by worry, piece of gear by piece of gear, right? Don't throw rocks yet, but like Netflix and binging and the whole world of like, how many hours did you spend on that? Oh, me too. I mean, okay, awesome. The appetite is awesome. It's like, I just want to hang out with you and just rest a little bit. Awesome. What a beautiful thing. The problem is when it becomes this like desire and appetite becomes this need. I need this, probably because I'm trying to like not think about these other things. And generally in these, I mean, I'll just name them off so we don't feel terrible here. Like Facebook, like social media. You know, we look at 16-year-olds and they've got their phones like this, and you can't move it. If you move it like that, this is what happens if you kind of pull it like it, you know. That's a lot of power for a kid to have. They don't even know, I mean, we're adults and we're like, where do they learn it from, number one? But, you know, it's like, that's a lot of power to say you've got all your needs and wants, or desires and wants are now your needs. You've got it right here, you know. Gaming, home improvement is awesome. These are fun things, like what cool things. But when they become the object of our worship and really taking all of our attention, it gets a little dangerous. Inch by inch, row by row, wife by wife. Relationships. From desire to what we worship, or the lack of the relationship. From what we desire to what we worship. Sex. Beautiful. Corrupted, it turns into all the things, right? Porn, success, being right. These are beautiful. Like that's a beautiful thing, being right. But then it moves into what we worship, and it's like, no, I'm pretty much right all the time, kind of like Solomon was. And really, as kings and queens of our kingdoms and queendoms, it's always like, well, this is the way it should go. FYI, God and other people in my life. Like, I'm kind of the king here. You might be your own king in your kingdom, but in my kingdom, this is how it goes, right? I mean, it's just all day long. What appetites have become a form of worship for you and me? Just worth the question. Or like thinking about later. What appetites have become a form of worship for you? Not in a way of shame, but a way of walking forward. Last year was a hard year for me, and past few years have been a hard season for my wife and I. We moved here, and I was touring like crazy. We have 4 crazy, awesome kids, and and she's mothering these little people and trying to hold up a house, and you know. I just all of a sudden found that I had a funk in my heart. Maybe with no end. I mean, it really, like, it just would come out. Like, at times I'm like, I don't even know how that just came out, but like my kid would walk in and they'd be breathing. I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, I mean, just things would happen. Or I'd be holding 20 things, I'd drop one, I'm like, ugh. Just funk in my heart, like big time. It was kind of different from my world because other things would be fine, but just in those relationships, all of a sudden, I just had this thing, I couldn't stop it. And it took one of my best friends to talk through, because we're being refined in community, to go, man, what's the bottom of that? Like, let's be curious. So if you've ever had a funk in your heart or do today, I get it. And the invitation would be, what would it look like to become curious about what's at the bottom of that? For me, it was resentment, ultimately. And my wife's totally cool with us talking about this. She's a babe. And there are needs, the things that I was wanting that I wasn't getting. I wasn't being seen, I wasn't being heard in the season. I'd come home and I'm like, hey, here I am, and she's like, well, why don't you deal with you? And I got my stuff going on. She's an Enneagram 2, if that makes sense to you. She's giving the world, everything to everybody else. I mean, that girl is incredible. But just doesn't take it for herself. And I get lumped into herself, into that thing. It's like, okay, you're a big boy with big boy pants. You can do your own stuff. I'm worrying about everybody else here. I began to play the victim role. And ultimately, it took me to this place where I was just resentful. And I'd play the victim role, and in the victim role, I went to, you know what? I don't deserve this. I deserve this. And I'm going to start demanding it with my power or with my, cold chill. And then I start judging her for how she loves me or not. Instead of me actually going, Jesus, help me see her for who she is. Like, she is a hurting, amazing, kind, compassionate mentor, best friend, beautiful, discerning woman. Help me to see her for that, Jesus. I want your eyes. I just was so drunk in my thing. So where are we so drunk in our needs, our wants and desires that turn into needs that, I don't know, that we stop seeing people for who Jesus made them to be? Jesus says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. My resentment and wants were becoming my treasure. And thus my heart was being poisoned like the ring of Mordor. We were going through a really hard time just with parenting, and a few of my kids were it was just a hard season for my wife and I. And ultimately, I shut down, she shuts down. I don't know if you've ever done that before. Instead of me finding compassion for my wife and empathy for my wife as a hurting human whom I love, I just lived in my own kingdom because my kingdom was being threatened. So in order for me to have joy, which is a fruit of the Spirit, not a fruit of Hillary, Hillary had to completely. My desires became my worship. They became my God, of needing these things so bad that it became my worship, it became my God, it became my joy determiner. What is like sucking at your joy right now? Does it have anything to do with the things that you're actually really wanting and desiring, which are probably really great things? But have they moved into needs? Dallas Willard talks about this idea that we can walk, if our eyes are seeking first the kingdom of God, we could actually walk unoffendable. Because it's not about my kingdom anymore, my queendom, right? Jesus talks about in John 15 that we are to be attached to the vine. We are branches. It doesn't say that, like my wife and I, we're the same branch. We're both branches attached to the vine, getting our source there. And every time we pull away, we're losing our source so we can grab onto other things. And we're going, I need this from you. I need this. You've got to satisfy this for me. Impossible. Not saying we don't share our wants and our desires with people. That's beautiful. And then my mom's a therapist, and she always talks about this idea of, let me get there. In John 15, Jesus says, stay attached to me, and there's joy unlimited for you. And then it keeps going to stay attached to me. I'm the source. I have your contentment awaiting for you. I mean, it's just sitting there. I'm here. And then at the end of it, it says, so because of all these things, go and love well. That being the purpose of it, like almost as if I'm attached, she's attached, or whoever these people are, right? And if I care enough for her, for what they think and what she feels, that she would care enough for me about what I think and what I feel. She doesn't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with her. It's not like acquiescing. It's, I care enough. So in your relationships, do you care enough to go, okay, as one attached to this divine, to go, I want to care about what you think and what you feel. I want to care about what you think and what you feel. I mean, it's hard to beat that relationship. Two people are really attached to the source. This is the great invitation. This is actually, I would say, is the gospel. It's being aware of Jesus, that his kingdom, his vine, his vineyard, is being attached to him all the time. And when we get it, we stop being attached and we go somewhere else, it's not living in shame. It's going, okay, I'm gonna reattach. Okay. Why don't you close your eyes? Take a deep breath. What appetites have become a form of worship for you? Just think about it. It's just worth thinking about, and talking to Jesus about, and talking to even somebody else about. What appetites have become a form of worship in your story? Jesus, would you help us to remain curious about what's going on deeper? And hear your heart for us as you're saying, I love you like crazy. There are no other gods before me because they don't work. I work. Jesus, your invitation for us today would be just to start by actually practicing gratitude for what is today. For the needs that we have today, the wants and desires and the appetites that we have, just stay in that place of gratitude. And then as we're about to pray these songs, what do you think Jesus might be inviting you, specifically you, whatever you heard today, what would he maybe be inviting you into? As we leave this place in the next 10,000 minutes until we gather again, what is he inviting your heart into? Jesus, that we'd awaken to our true identity in you today. And tomorrow when we wake up, we'd awaken into our true identity as branches attached to you, our source, our vine. Then from that strength and power and well, that we would love well. Take deeper breaths.